George Floyd is my father. George Floyd is my brother. George Floyd is my family. George Floyd is me. So if you like me, if you love me, and you saw me killed by a policeman who knelt on my neck until I was dead, I imagine you'd miss me. That's exactly how I feel every single time I see a black man or woman shot down, knelt on, and killed by the police. And I know some of you out there might say, oh, well, but do you really feel like that, Kyle? I mean, they're not really a family. It doesn't really affect you. You're not really related. I mean, you're light-skinned. You're really light. You're not even black. Yes, I am. Let me tell you, I may be mixed race and light-skinned and have a white mother who I love and adore more than I can express. But none of that is going to give me a get-out-of-jail-free card when a racist wants to step to me. It certainly hasn't when they've stepped to me in the past. They don't see me and go, oh, he's got a white mum. He's all right. It don't work like that. But I'm also aware the lightness of my skin has afforded me a privilege in life, in as much as I probably haven't received as much brutality and racism towards me as darker-skinned black people. But let me tell you this, the lightness of my skin does not equate to the pain I feel in my heart when I see a fellow black person die. Die by the hands of a civilian racist or by a racist police officer. To put into some perspective why this is such a global issue, and it's not just an American issue, it really is a global issue, and why it's hitting the black community of the UK and our supporters, our allies. And people out there say, well, you shouldn't feel it that bad because the UK is not that bad, not as bad as other countries, X, Y, and Z. One of my earliest memories is being 4 years old in nursery, and another little 4-year-old white boy called me a nigger. And I cried. No, I didn't know what that word meant. I didn't know what hate was behind it, but I knew that it was loaded with hate and it was directed at me. And bless him, even that little 4-year-old boy, he couldn't have known what it meant or what weight was behind it. Of course he didn't. He just knew to associate it with me. He probably learned it from his elders, from his parents or whomever. And I cried, and it came to the end of the day, and the teacher told my mum, and my mum knelt down to me and said, oh, my darling, don't worry. You're not a nigger. You're half-caste. Just goes to show how times change, because I don't use the word half-caste anymore. A lot of people do, but I know not to use it because the word half-caste is derived from the Latin meaning half pure, meaning that white is complete purity, is legitimate, is better. So to say half-caste is to say that I am muddied, that I'm not as good. So I don't use that term anymore. But bless, it's been in circulation for so long, people don't know. I certainly didn't know then. And I, unfortunately, like a lot of other black people, mixed race people, have received racism over and over again. And you just sort of try and let it wash over you because you know it's, of course, stupidity. I've received racism from an Olivier Award-winning actor, whose name I won't say because then it would sensationalize the point I'm trying to make, because it's not about that. I suppose I bring that up because within my profession, or what's perceived from the outside of my profession, is that a lot of people are very liberal-minded and wouldn't think like that. And on the whole, a lot of people in my industry are, and I thank them for that. But it's not always as liberal as you think. It's really not. And quite a few of the other instances in which I've received racism have also been from fellow people within my industry. The reason I bring this up is to not make it about me, because it isn't about me. It's about George Floyd and every other black life lost and every other black life that's being persecuted. But I bring it up because as a British person, as a Welsh person, I need for you, the listener, to gain some perspective as to why we not only empathize, but we feel it. And the pain we feel in the UK in regard to racism is ever present, especially when our elders are being shipped across the world because the British government doesn't want them here anymore. Why? The Windrush generation who's being insulted and their souls, their hearts being broken, their families being torn apart because they're not wanted here anymore, because they're black, because the government doesn't want to have to pay them pensions after they've been taxpayers for over 50 years, after they were called here to the UK to build up this nation after World War II, after they came from a country that was built and founded by the British and owned by the British, from being enslaved by the British. Yeah, we don't feel the effects of racism here in the UK. And the fact that we're in the middle of a pandemic which has taken the lives of so many people, black, white, Asian, everyone. But we've been told that black and brown and ethnic minorities in general are 4 times more likely to suffer and die from COVID-19. And yet the government is deciding to reopen work, reopen so many different aspects of the UK. And who's going to feel the effects when the pandemic hits even stronger again? White people will, absolutely, and my heart bleeds for them as it has done, and as it will do. But 4 times more likely, it will be black and brown people. That says something. It says something that the government is choosing to do that. It's saying that black and brown lives are expendable in their eyes. White lives will be lost as well as black and brown lives because the government thinks that they are collateral damage because they'd rather serve the elite to keep money in their pockets, to keep the elite powerful and privileged. And to go on to the point of privilege, I want to talk about white privilege and clarify what it means. White privilege does not mean white wealth, because you can be poor, struggling, and in hardship and be white. The difference is that you're not poor, struggling, and in hardship because you're white. That's the difference. Black people are. Because of the systemic racism and the layers of policy that's been put in place to keep them oppressed. And don't get me wrong, you may be white and persecuted because you're Welsh, because you're Scottish, because you're Irish, because you're Polish, because you're trying to keep your language alive, because you don't conform to the supremacist idea of what is the identity of the aftermath of empire. But it's not because you're white. And that doesn't mean feel guilty because you're white. Don't feel guilty because you're white. It's a ridiculous notion. If you're going to feel guilty because you're basking in the privilege of being white at the expense of others and you're doing nothing about it. And the first thing you can do is just support, just be part of the movement, because it's your movement too. It's not just about black people. It's really not. It is really not. We need you. We need you. We need white people. It's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to say. It's uncomfortable to talk about, but this is the reality of the world. And for so long, we haven't spoken about it, or we've tiptoed around the issue, and there's been a lot of denial about it. So this is the most honest I've ever been on the subject, talking about it. And rather than feeling awkward about it, I want to feel freed by it. And whoever listens to this video, I want you to be freed by it too. I want you to be able to think, you know what? Enough's enough. I want to help. And the best way to do that is to be a voice for us and with us. Because we're not in charge. You are. We literally don't have the means to enforce change unless we have you do it first to open the door for us to gain equality. It's as simple as that. Support the Black Lives Matter movement. And for those of you who need it explained still, though it is staggering to me that you do, if a house was on fire in your street, blazing, and a fire engine came to put it out, but started spraying all the other houses, not prioritizing the one house which is burning down with people inside who are going to be burned to a cinder, that would be strange, wouldn't it? That's what the Black Lives Matter movement is. Right now, the priority, because America's on fire. People's lives are being lost, and we need to focus our attention to prevent that and stop it. It's the same thing. It's not only Black Lives Matter, it's Black Lives Matter as well as your white life, because clearly Black lives have been not a priority and have been purposefully oppressed and extinguished. Please speak up and support, otherwise your silence speaks volumes. Don't think that because we got the Will Smiths of the world and the Denzel Washingtons and the Michael B. Jordans that there's equality, because those exceptional men are just that. Their talent, measured with preparation and opportunity and allies along the way, allowed them to be where they are now. But there are thousands and millions of black men and women out there who didn't have that opportunity and who are living in a wretched existence when it comes to the persecution of themselves because of the colour of their skin and the economic structure and society in which they live in. And I ain't trying to paint all black people as being, downtrodden and they're all living in squalor. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying the system keeps them from progressing at the rate that they should, at the rate that is equal to white people. To all of you who are supporting and speaking up, thank you. It means the world. To my family, I love and adore you all. Specifically, to my white family, thank you for showing support and love. It means the world. I love you all dearly. A message to black and mixed race people very quickly. Take a stress off yourself. You don't need to explain yourself. You really don't. There's a thing called Google. If you get to a point where you're straining and you're stressed, you're hitting a brick wall with people, direct them to Google. There is plenty of information on the internet where people can go and educate themselves, and they have no excuse to be ignorant or racist then. But don't think that you have to be the one to change their mind. Because I've done it myself. I've come away from conversations with people who were dear friends to me, and I've sat and I've stewed, and I've thought, what could I have said? What could I have done to convince this person to not think like this? To not be racist? And then I realised, while I'm sat here stewing, they are off, not a care in the world, not a jot. They are fine. They're certainly not caring about me. They certainly weren't caring about me when they broke my heart during the conversation. So the best thing to do is say, okay, like Maya Angelou says, when a person shows himself for who they really are, believe them. Argue with a fool, there's two fools arguing. My good friend said that. I'm not a fool. Take the stress off yourself. George Floyd, Sean Reed, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor. This video has been about them and every other black person in America, in the UK, and around the world who has suffered or died because of racism. The topic of racism is so vast, there's only so much you can cover in one burst because it can be exhausting. But to all those who've listened to what I had to say, I thank you. I thank you for your support. It's greatly appreciated. And to all those out there who heard everything I had to say, still want to argue the point, still want to be ignorant, still want to be racist, you can kiss my black and white, mixed race, Welsh and Cape Verde brown ass. But to all those who are allies and are showing love and support, thank you. Much love.